Joined by John Bostock after 16 years since his move from Crystal Palace to Tottenham. John, great to have you here to do this interview, sort of looking back on what was a transfer that made a lot of headlines at the time and must have been quite an experience for you. And this is something that, people always think about when they think of you ever since your career has sort of moved on from there. You've played for lots of clubs since, and I'm just fascinated to see, particularly ahead of Tottenham Crystal Palace this weekend, the two clubs involved, how you reflect on all of it. So yeah, looking back now, 16 years on, first of all, what do you remember of that move? Because it was quite a sort of crazy time. There was a bit of talk between the two clubs. You were very young at the time, but you were at the heart, front and center of it all. What are your memories of it?
Yeah, it was a very fast start to my career, being 15 and playing first team football in the men's game, being, spoke about in the news and being desired by different clubs. It's a lot, but I guess, what kept me and kind of kept me focused through that time was just my passion for football. I loved the game, and my desire was to play at the highest level and to have a long career and to try and find the best place to take the next step in my career. I guess at that age, you have some level of understanding, but maybe not wisdom. And so there are people around you that you trust, and you need to kind of, lean on their understanding and their knowledge of the game. And so I did that. The people around me, I trusted them, I listened to them, and we were able to, narrow the selection down to a few clubs. And, my desire was to stay at Palace. I really wanted to stay at the club that made my debut at, but for whatever reason, it seemed as though the deal was a bit more tricky than we first thought it would be. And other clubs came and offered, really great offers on a sporting level, in the financial level. And so, yeah, Tottenham was the club that we chose. But yeah, it was a very, very, it made a lot of noise. I should say that. The move made a lot of noise. There was a lot of talk. I remember I'd be getting a train to school and I'd open up the papers and I'd see my face on the back, like often the Metro newspaper in London. I'd be like, it was a big story, in football in London at the time. And looking back on it, it was a time that I really didn't define me, but it had a big impact on how I saw life. I realized that my confidence and my identity couldn't be built in what people think of me, because people have many opinions, and I realized that if I read everything and believe everything people say about me, I'll be in trouble, and that's good or bad. I believe if you live for people's acceptance, you'll die by their rejection. So I realized that everyone's entitled to their opinion, but I had my reasons for signing for Spurs, and that was the kind of next step in my career. So yeah, I wish I could have played for Palace for longer, because that's the club that I spent 9 years of my life at. I wish I could have played more, but I'm very honoured to have played for the club that I supported, and to get 5 or 6 appearances at such a young age.
Yeah, you speak so eloquently about it. I can see that you've reflected on it for a long time now, on how it, as you say, not defined you, but had a big impact on your identity and how we come to think of you as a footballer. I mean, just on the move itself, it seemed like it was a bit of a maybe messy transfer. Like, I was just reading back on it, like it sounded like Spurs announced it and then Palace were saying, no, hold on, it's not been done yet. What was that like as the person that all of this was revolving around?
Yeah, I think I learned from that experience, that it's your career and you have to try to control the narrative. I didn't have control at that time. There were decisions being made and stories being written and stuff being released. And as a young player, it's like you hear a lot of noise, but you don't have any say on what's really going on. Of course, I signed for Tottenham, but all the politics and the noise around it, you're just a part of that. And I've learned the hard way over years. We have the responsibility to make decisions for ourselves, and yeah, it was messy. Simon Jordan's made it clear over the years he wasn't happy about what happened, and clubs couldn't agree, so went to the tribunal, which is never ideal for the club who's selling the player. And so I can understand the frustrations of the fans at Palace, and yeah, I mean transfers they're not always smooth, but I'm sure it could have been done a lot easier, you know, looking back on it. But I was a kid, I was 15 years old, and I've got a son now, and I think, wow, he's 8 in 7 years. How much say will he have on his, you know, on big decisions being made in his life? So I learned a lot, a lot. I learned a lot, and going through what I experienced from the fans at Palace and uh, different emotions I experienced, yeah, it really helped to refine me, you know, refine my character because people just see John Bostock the player, but behind that there is a person. And I think the early stages of me being exposed to that kind of limelight exposure and just being out there and for people to have an opinion on them and vocalize yeah, it really definitely refined my character for sure.
It's interesting you mentioned your son, and it is crazy thinking he's only 8, but like you say, 7 years away from the situation you're in. I don't know if he's got any of his old man's football skills already showing that, but would you, if he does have the chances of following in your footsteps, having gone through everything you have in football, would you recommend it? Would you recommend a football career to someone as close to you as your own son?
So I believe in destiny, and I believe that God has given us abilities and talents that it could be in any field. I believe that there are specific assignments that we're supposed to achieve in life, and sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. But I do believe that, you know, I didn't choose football. Although I chose to train them, I didn't choose my talent. It was very natural for other people who play football or they're in music, or you don't choose to have a voice. You know, like it's a gift. And if my son is gifted in football, or he's gifted in, you know, being a politician or a barber or, you know, a waiter or whatever he wants to go into, and I see that there's a gift in him for that, I'll support him in it. And I think to myself, it would be wonderful if he was a footballer because that's the area that I have the most expertise in. Through my failures, through my successes, through my life experiences, I can now, you know, give him wisdom from first-hand experience. There are other fields that he might choose that I don't have that in, and I can learn and encourage him and pray for him and lead him as much as I can. But football is what I've done for all my life. So, you know, if he was interested and had the talent and, you know, he wanted to pursue a career in football, I know some of the pitfalls and I know the joys, the highs, the lows of it, and I'd be more than happy to mentor him and lead him and guide him, you know. So we'll see what field he goes into, but it is a tough game. On the inside, it's not easy, but that shouldn't be something to run away from because at the end of the day, the boy in South London who fell in love with kicking a ball against the wall and playing in playgrounds, the ball is still the same, the pitch is still the same. There's a lot of stuff that comes with it, but football, it's the world's game and there's nothing like it.
Absolutely, and your talk of mentoring and particularly your faith is something we'll come on to pretty soon. But just back looking back on Spurs and kind of what you're getting at there really with your son. If you could talk to your younger self now, if you had that ability to go back in time with all the benefit of hindsight now and particularly your years of your experiences in football, what particular advice would you give 15-year-old John Bostock?
There's many things I would say to him. There's many things I would say. I think it's really important to seek wise counsel, like to get advice from people who know more than you. I, I think in the multitude of counsel there is safety. So when you have advice from people who are, you know, they know more than you, it's you can make a safer and more wise decision. Now, of course, you know, I trusted people around me, but there are also managers and people at the club and other people like who maybe I would have loved to have got their opinion on my decisions or what I was going to do. Now, ultimately, I have to make a choice and I have to sign um, a contract. But I think I would also tell younger John Bostock, like, enjoy the process. I think there's a danger in as footballers that we only enjoy the high moments. And from some players like Messi, they're every single day, you know. But for the majority of players, you know, high moments don't come every single moment, or you know, you don't succeed every week or score every week, or you know, you're not, you know, the talk of the town every single week. That's from a minority of players. And I would say enjoy the process. Like I guess along the journey, because of what I've been through, I kind of lost that joy of even the hard moments of the fact that I can get to train every day and do what I love and kick a ball around and be amongst teammates and rub shoulders with players who are great at their craft and you know the moments you get to travel, like all of these things are things you can enjoy. Like it's not a destination you're going after here, John. It's the journey.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's not just where the journey takes you, it's the man that the journey makes you. And so I would say the young man, like enjoy it, enjoy every single step of it, because it's not going to be forever. You know, there's going to be highs and lows, but enjoy the journey. And I think I've come to a place now in the latter stages of my career. I've been able to embrace that, and it's so freeing. You know, I'm not saying I enjoy losing. I'm not saying that, but I enjoy playing. I enjoy getting on that pitch and competing. You can't always control the result, but you can enjoy you can control how you apply yourself. And so I would tell him, you know, seek wise counsel, get wisdom from people who know the game more than you, but enjoy the journey. You're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna make errors, but make sure you enjoy it.
Yeah, I speak to a lot of players and they do sort of reflect later on in their careers. You know, that is often a thing that when they're young, it's so hard to sort of think ahead, and all you're thinking about is either the next move or the next step in your career, and you know you're so focused on that rather than enjoying it all. So I can totally understand that. Um, you know, a lot of fans would sort of look back and go, why not just stay at Palace for longer? It's never as simple as that. A career is so short, and you have to work out what might be the right sort of move for you at the time. But on sort of on that note, you mentioned earlier that you wish you had played for a bit longer. You didn't know how it was going to pan out at Tottenham. Obviously, no one's got a crystal ball. But how do you reflect on that? Do you? You sounds like you've come to peace with all of it anyway. But looking back now and the benefit of 16 years on, you know, how do you look back on that?
Yeah, listen, many people live with regrets. You know, we've all got regrets. I mean, some people say, I've got no regrets. And I understand the thinking of that because you're you become who you are through your decisions. But I've made decisions, you know, in life that I wish I made different decisions. It's that simple. But my life is not defined by what I thought I could have done better, you know, because if you live like that, you'll be a very sad person, or you'd live with heaviness. And I don't live with heaviness. I'm very grateful at the age of 32. I'm playing a game that I love. I'm able to play in front of wonderful fans here at County. I've been able to travel the world doing what I love to do. Um, and if I'm being really honest, Tom, like what's really helped me in my career is that as a young player, it was all about what I wanted, my career, my story, you know, but I've come to a place many years ago that I see my career as like an instrument I can use to actually, you know, come alongside people and help them in what they've gone through. And maybe I had to go through what I went through for me to understand that, okay, John, if your whole career is just about you, it's a it, I think it could be used better. Sometimes it's just a shallow thing to have just focus on yourself. And I get it. You have to play and you have to, you know, focus on your craft. And I'm that goes without saying, but I've been able to really use football as a tool to help others, and I'm focusing on them has really brought me a lot of freedom and joy. And so yeah, I think regrets are something that you have to learn to live with. In that you can't be held by them. You learn, you move on, and you progress in life. And so yeah, look at Palace, you know, we told the club we wanted to stay, and the offer wasn't what they said it was going to be. And so, you know, we don't normally talk about that, but it wasn't what they said it was going to be. We asked for another offer, and they said, "Well, this is it." And we said, "Well, this is what we've got elsewhere," and they couldn't say, "Well." And so that was the side that we don't often talk about. And you know, and we moved on, and we pressed, and we pushed on. And so I would love to have played for the club longer. You know, it's a club that will always be close, so close to my heart. I follow them closely, and you know, I signed for the club when I was 6 years old. You know, and a dream came true in playing for Sellers in front of my family and the club and the club's fans. So I would love to play for the club more, and I'm very grateful that I was able to play for them at all.
You have a role as a bit of a mentor now. So when you're talking to younger players and you're giving them advice and you're talking about some of the difficulties you've had and how you learned from them, what specific moments do you call upon when you're talking about it? Those harder moments. Was it particularly when you went to Spurs and you know had sort of succession of loan moves? What moments do you draw upon when you're talking to those young lads?
I talk about it all because I've been the wonder kid. I've been the traveler in terms of traveling around the world. I've been without a club. I've been um, injured. I've had surgery. I've had a lot of noise about me. I've had no noise about me. You know, I feel like I've faced it all in some sort of capacity, and that has really equipped me to be able to help players who go through stuff. So if my career was just plain sailing, I would never been able to have empathy or understand what a player who hasn't had a successful time or is going through real difficulty, or is going through a really a dark process of like mentally. And I've been there. You know, I've been at a place at 21 when I was thinking to retire. I was there.
Really?
Yeah, I was there. I was there. I was thinking, you know what? It's because I made football something that it shouldn't have been. I, Football is an amazing, amazing game, but it can't be a foundation to build your life upon because it changes. One minute people are singing your name, next minute you're not playing. It's if you build your life upon something that's changing, you're going to change often. So I realized I had to build my life upon something that is unchanging, and actually through that, I've been able to realize that football is so amazing and it's incredible, but it has to have its right place. People say football is life. Well, okay, what happens when football stops? You die? Do you know what I mean? I remember when COVID happened and football had to pause, and I was mentoring a lot of players through that. It's like, well, what do I do now? Who am I? It's like I have no purpose. There's no football. And that really exposed a lot of the fact that we put a lot of our identity in the game, who we are on Saturdays, our what fans think of us, how I performed. And don't get me wrong, we have to perform. We're paid to do our jobs and we're paid to play. But if your whole identity is in who you are as a player, then you as a person takes a big hit. So yeah, when mentoring younger players and even players who are not young, I help them to understand and learn that you have to give everything to the game, but at the same time, your identity can't be wrapped up in it
For sure, this is
because
something that comes up regularly with players after they retire, and you know, there's the statistics on how many players straight after retirement in those first few years really struggle with various things from mental health to any kind, you know, substance abuse, whatever it might be, just because they can't deal with it. So that seems really relevant. Just because it's Tottenham Palace this weekend, just to go back to Spurs, that time there. Talk us through that time. You mentioned when you're 21, you even considering retirement. I'm guessing you were still at the club at that point.
I just left the club, so my
Okay.
contract expired, and I didn't really have offers from any other clubs, and so I went through a process of, I was supposed to, in people's minds, be here, and I wasn't, and my confidence was very low, and because I'd experienced such a low, I thought, you know what, is this game even for me anymore? Like, and the doubt starts to come in. Am I really a good player? And you start to believe things that aren't true. Um, and you have to search deep, you have to search deep. And I came to a place in my faith that I realized actually, I get to do what I love to do. Let me not make it about people's opinions anymore. Let me not make it about, trying to prove people wrong or me right. Let me just enjoy the game. And I went out to Belgium, second division at Antwerp, under Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, and that was the first season I played more than 10 games. I never played more than 10 games up to the age of 21. And I
Wow.
just played the whole season and I got like, I think 18 assists. I scored only one goal, but I was able to really express myself. And I was like, I fell in love with the game again because I made it just about playing. It wasn't, I have to get this contract. I have to show people I'm the wonder kid. I'd lived that reality, and it wasn't a nice one. Um, but I got to a place in my faith and my football that I was free, and it's been an amazing journey ever since.
Yeah, just to jump back quickly to just that brief spell of Spurs, and then we'll come on to some of your different places that
Sure.
you went to. So you're at Tottenham. I can't remember exactly how many managers you would have had, but knowing Spurs, probably a few during that period. Had a lot of loan
Yeah,
moves.
I'd one day Ramos, Harry
Mhm.
Redknapp, and I think
David Lee.
Villas-Boas came after that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's hard. You've got new managers. You're trying to prove yourself. You're going on loan. Give us a flavour of what that experience was like.
Yeah, I mean, so you're going out on loan to prove yourself. You're going out on loan to gain experience. You're going out on loan to to play men's football. So I went on loan to Brentford first, then Hull, Sheffield Wednesday, then Toronto. And loans are uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable. You're being played out of position. You're coming into a new environment, trying to get to know the team very quickly. You're coming in, and you're taking someone else, a senior pro's position. This is the first time in your career. Well, I played at Palace, but I made my debut at Spurs. But it's the first time you're actually in a team playing week in, week out for results. Players got mortgages to pay. There's a lot that ride on performances. Managers' jobs are in the balance. And you're coming in, and you're trying to gain your confidence and gain your kind of, push your career at an environment you're not going to be at for a long time. And it's not easy. And I realized, looking back on it, loans aren't just to be successful. They're to teach you, get experience. You're exposed to different environments, and I definitely learned. It was uncomfortable, being played out of position, and having some short loans sometimes, having to adapt very quickly. So it definitely brought me out of my comfort zone. And some went well, and some didn't go as well as expected. But I definitely learned.
What was the toughest one, John? From a
Tough one was Wednesday, Sheffield Wednesday. I played 4 games under Gary Megson at Sheffield Wednesday, and my last game for Wednesday, I gave a penalty away, and I didn't have a good game, and we lost 1-0. I think it was Chesterfield away, and I remember going on Twitter after and just looking at the comments, and I was getting absolutely hammered. And football means a lot to me, and I want to play good for the fans, and it hurt. Like, I don't remember if I cried. I remember at times in my career I'd come off the pitch in tears, and it's because you care so much about you want to be a player that the fans love. You want to be a player that brings something to the team. But yeah, what I went through my early days of the loan, it definitely taught me a lot. And so Wednesday was a tough one for sure. I was on loan under Di Canio at Swindon, which was an eye opener. He was a very different character. Went out to the MLS. Whole, so I haven't been afraid to travel. I've traveled. Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot through loans for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, onto traveling. I mean, you mentioned when you went to Belgium, you sort of recaptured your love of football. So tell us about some of those experiences from traveling the world, because you've played for numerous clubs, particularly ones abroad. And, I think obviously when you were 14, there's talk of Barcelona, you went to Tottenham, but I think any player who has a professional career is a massive achievement, and to have one where you've had so many different experiences. And it seems like you've come to sort of really appreciate that, the older you've got in your career. And so now you can sort of look back on particularly some of those foreign stints with sort of joy, I suppose. So tell us a bit about those.
I loved playing abroad. I really loved playing abroad. I would have considered, spending the rest of my career out there, but we had to come back to England due to family reasons. But I loved it. I think now it's changed, but with, players like Colin Kadeem Richards, Jay Bothroyd, I, I came a bit after that, but there weren't many English players really, going abroad to kind of rebuild their career. There were players like Joe Cole who went as a, already, established player, but it wasn't really a damn thing so much. And I went out there and I loved it. I was able to, try to pick up languages, learn different cultures, really out of the comfort zone. But I really flourished as a player. The style of the game on the continent really was one that suited my game, and I learned my qualities as a player. And yeah, I mean, Belgium and France and Turkey, back to France. It was definitely a time that helped me to grow as a man. My wife was with me the whole way as well, so it was a great time for our marriage as well. So yeah, I played for some really, really wonderful clubs, met some amazing fans, met some amazing people, players I played alongside, and it's a time that I really hold dear in my career, because the player I left England as wasn't the player who came back to England.
For sure. And you're still playing now, and you've got a game this weekend. So first of
Yeah.
all, tell us about your preparation ahead of the match this weekend. And do you still love football as much as you ever did?
Yeah, I love the game. I'm passionate about it. I love it. I'm still a fan. To play it is something that I absolutely just even just training, just to get on the ball and being able to do what you love every single day. It really is an honor. I don't consider it as something light. I absolutely love it. I love helping young players. And hopefully, I hope to play for many more years. I've loved being at Notts County. We played a great brand of football. Um, Recently, the results haven't gone our way, but Bradford's going to be, a bit of a cauldron. The fans are quite hostile there, so we look forward to. We beat them at our place earlier in the season. We hope to replicate that result on Saturday.
And tell me about Ballers in God then. So this is an organization that I think you yourself set up. Obviously, faith is something that's very central to you. Is that something that's always been the case, or is that something that you've rediscovered your faith in recent years? Tell me about this whole organization and why faith and destiny and God, as you mentioned, are so important to you.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that if you try to build a house on sand, it will crumble. Because sand, is beautiful, but it's soft. It can't hold a structure. And I realize that football is wonderful, but to build your life upon it, whether that be business, whether that be money, things that always change. It wouldn't be wise to build your life and identity on things that can't hold you. And I've realized I wasn't raised as a Christian. I wasn't raised with any belief, really, just to believe in myself. When I was 15 years old, I heard the gospel, which means the good news, for the first time. And I had an encounter with Jesus Christ. And my life has never been the same since. My heart has changed, my mind has changed. And over the years, I've realized that footballers were quite a hard group of people to reach in terms of, people get access to players. It's changed now with social media, but players go through stuff. And in my journey, I've been through a lot, and I realized actually, if I've been through what I've been through, I needed support. There must be other players out there needing the same thing. And so, yeah, Ballers in God, it's a movement of professional footballers or semi-pro players. Uh, so we are a disciple-making movement in the world of football. That basically means we come alongside players and help them to grow in their faith, understand, who they are, understand more about Jesus. And we've had some amazing testimonies of players who, they've stayed in the game because of Ballers in God. Their life has changed because of Ballers, but their marriages have got better. Their careers have become more prosperous, and they know who they are now, better than they did before. So we have online prayer meetings every single morning. We meet weekly online with end of season retreats, and we want to just support players who have an interest in faith. I think more and more now players are becoming a bit more vocal about their faith and what they believe and who they are. And I think it's really wonderful to see. And so, yeah, we have a group of leaders who are all professional players, and they come alongside players. We mentor them, we encourage, and so we're a support group, and we have a big following online. And I think that faith and football is something that has been even more united in this period. So yeah, it's something that I'm very passionate about. Because in all honesty, like, Jesus changed my life. Yeah, I wouldn't believe it. I thought it was a myth. He really changed my life. And I know that what he's done for me, he can do for others also.
Well, can I just ask you to elaborate a little bit more on your encounter with Jesus? What do you exactly mean by that? And also, I can't help but noticing that you mentioned that you were 15 at the time, which just so happens to be around the time this whole Crystal Palace to Tottenham move happened. So can you tell me a bit about the sort of timeline with
Sure.
regards to that move? Does it actually fit in just when that happened?
Yeah, so I had an encounter with Jesus. That basically means that I had something happen in my life where it's like my eyes opened. It's like I had understanding of who he was. So this happened before the whole transfer happened, and I'm very glad it did because I needed Jesus more than ever. But to make it simple, I saw my sister's life change, like from night to day. And although people can argue about religion and this and that, when you see someone's life change, whether it be placebo effect or not, you can't deny it. Something's happened. And I said, Tara, what's happened to you? Like, you're different now. She said, John, Jesus changed my life. And I never heard anyone say something like that before. She said, John, if you want to come to, she said, come to church with me if you'd like. And that was the last place I ever wanted to go, if I'm honest with you. But the next day, I looked at the newspaper and Kaka said, I belong to Jesus. I thought, oh my gosh, yesterday my sister said that, today Kaka. And Tom, I always had big questions, like, why are we here? What's life about? And I think these are answers that we will look for. Anyway, I went to church that Sunday in Greenwich. It's a church called Christian Life Fellowship, and that was the first time I heard the gospel message. The gospel means the bad news that we've all made mistakes and have sinned. The good news that God didn't just leave us in our mess. He sent Jesus Christ to actually take our place and take our punishment, and so that we can receive forgiveness and eternal life. And it wasn't just head knowledge for me. It like hit my heart. It was like, you know what, if this Jesus character is who he says he is, I need to just consider him. I don't know about the Bible and church, but this Jesus character, you know, our whole even timeline is built upon his birth, 2024. He's someone who's someone to consider. And I thought, you know, if what he's saying is true, I want to look into it. And I've said a very simple prayer that day, and my life has never been the same since. Like genuinely from the inside out, I've changed. And so the timeline was before I moved, before the whole journey started, internally there was a rewiring in my heart, and that was done by the Lord, So at that time, I had pastors, I had people around me I could come to, and just as a man, not as a player, that could encourage me. And I'm very, very glad that happened at that time, because I'm not sure how I would be today if I didn't know who I was before people tried to tell me who I was, So I'm very grateful.
That sounds amazing. I can see how you're helping, as you mentioned, a lot of players who have faith as well. It sounds like a really, really good thing. We're sort of coming towards the end now. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about some of the young players going to be involved in this game. I don't know how much you sort of are watching Premier League football at the moment, but there's a lot of talent around. And then just a few quick fire questions, if that's all right, just sort of some shortest answers. So first of all, well, actually, to be fair, Michael Elise is probably going to be injured this weekend, but I'm hoping Ebere Eze will be back. But there's also on the Tottenham side the likes of Mickey van der Ven, who's been an unbelievable signing, and Destiny Udogie. There's a lot of good young players. Who do you particularly like, and why do you rate them, I suppose?
I love watching Eze play. And I'm not just saying it because he's a fellow believer, but he really is he's like a throwback. The way he's able to glide past players, he plays without fear. And not to make it deep, but to know his journey and what he's been through, the rejection, to see him thrive now as one of the talisman for a Premier League club, it's really, really wonderful to see. And every time he gets the ball, he makes things happen. And so he's a player that I really, really love to watch. So Eze definitely, I would say, is one of my favorite, even in the Premier League to watch. I think he's wonderful, wonderful player. Van der Ven has been, an absolute, he's been colossal for Spurs this year. I watched him at Wolfsburg because one of our ballers in God, Felix Nemecha, was at Wolfsburg, and I watched him closely. And so before he came to the Premier League, Van der Ven was someone I was really impressed with. And I think he's just come on leaps and bounds since he's come to England. I didn't know he did that quickly, but he's brilliant. So I guess those are two players that that stand out. I know Doucouré is injured for Palace. I was with him at Lens in France. He's a younger player coming through, and I could see that he had some really good attributes. And so I think he'll be missed for Spurs for Palace in midfield. But it's really wonderful to see players be playing at a young age consistently. I think that it bodes well for the future of the game.
And just you mentioned Eze and his background. Are you in touch with him then?
Yeah. I don't know him closely, but we're in touch. He sent us a message the other day and just said like Ballers and God is incredible. Like just keep going. And that was really encouraging. He didn't need to message us that, but it was really encouraging to see because he makes it very plain and open about his faith in interviews when asked. So yeah, it's wonderful for us to see a player from South London, shine on the pitch and also representing Jesus. It's brilliant.
For sure. Right, John, got 3 minutes left on here. Got a few quick fire questions. Not one word answers, but maybe keep it relatively brief.
Sure.
So, first of all, best player you've ever played with?
Best player I've played with is Luka Modric. I end it on that. He's incredible. I didn't know he would go on to win Ballon d'Or, but he was always a step ahead, and he was absolutely brilliant. I played with Harry Kane, but as a midfielder, I'll probably choose Modric.
Mm-hmm. And then, who was your favourite coach out of all the coaches you've had?
Favorite coach, Luke Williams. I had the honour of having him last year at Notts County, and I've never worked under a manager like that. I've had some wonderful managers, but he was very, very rounded. Tactically, man management, he's a very special person, and I've loved working under him.
And out of all the clubs you've been at, not so much maybe your best stint, or perhaps that's related. Where were you happiest?
It's a really tough question. Really happy now at Notts County. I'm really happy here. Um, I love the football we play. The fans are brilliant. Where I'm at in life is but I've been happy. Honestly, I've been happy at many clubs. I love playing for in France and Belgium. Turkey was brilliant. Yeah, I guess get me on a pitch somewhere with a ball. I'm happy, and wherever that is, I've learned to be happy.
And what's the thing that you know now about football, professional football, after all these years that you didn't know before you started?
You need to learn to deal with disappointments very well. It's something that I wish someone told me, John, you need endurance for this game because you do. You need endurance, and many people they can't, for whatever reason. It's a tough game, and it takes a lot, but you need endurance. And you might make mistakes, but learn to deal with disappointment very quickly. Don't get too low when you're down, and don't get too high when you're up. So I think these are some of the things I would have said to myself as a young player.
And just finally, on young players, which young player out there, you might have already mentioned him to be fair, do you most enjoy watching at the moment?
Um, One of the young players out there that I love to really watch is Felix Lemaitre. He's a player he just signed for Dortmund from Wolfsburg. He's a very close friend of mine. He could have chose to play for England over Germany, but he chose Germany. He made his senior bow last year, and he's a player that I really, really love to watch. And maybe people in the Premier League should remember his name, Felix Lemaitre, because in a couple of years, I'm sure you'll be seeing him.